Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose, and I hope everybody had a great weekend. Though, we did actually have one problem this weekend, or more specifically, with the Xbox. Unfortunately, there was a major issue that popped up over this weekend that has caused a lot of discussion regarding DRM. I think many of you all probably already know what I'm talking about, and we'll discuss that a little later on in the video. Also, we did get some more clarification on a much fan-requested Nintendo game on why it has yet to release in the West, so we'll talk about that one as well. Per usual though, if you do find yourself enjoying the video, go and hit that like button below as it does help out the channel a ton. And while you're at it, go and hit that bell notification and subscribe button as well. That way you can keep up to date with all the latest gaming news, as I am here every single week, Monday through Friday. Besides all that, though, let's just go and jump right into the news, starting off with Halo Infinite. Of course, last week we talked about how they added the most important IP of all time to Halo Infinite, being Clippy. Definitely check that one out. But beyond that, I mean, there's still a lot of questions about more content for Halo Infinite. What are they going to do with this next? Because this season so far has been a little underwhelming. We've only gotten 2 new maps, and I think that is the big problem. But they might actually have a plan to inject not just a couple of new maps, but rather several maps into Halo Infinite. And I do like this idea, and that would be to add classic Halo maps to Halo Infinite. Yeah, this was implied over in the Kinda Funny Xcast, where the Halo Infinite's head of creative was asked about adding classic maps to Infinite, and check out his response. There are a lot of maps that are awesome. I think it would be awesome to play on those maps again. Don't you guys? That sounds like a fun thing. I'll mark that in my notebook. So, it does seem like he might be indicating that classic Halo maps will be heading to Halo Infinite sometime in the future, and I think that this would be a great way of injecting a lot of different maps quickly into Halo Infinite. As I've said several times on this channel, I think that this right now is the biggest thing that Infinite needs. The thing about this particular game is that it is great in almost every way it possibly needs. It has a great single player. Its story is interesting. The multiplayer plays phenomenally well. I love the mechanics of this game, and the only problem that it really has is that it needs more content, and it needs to add this content at a faster pace. And that's, I think, where these classic maps could be very beneficial, not just because they're excellent maps, but also maybe you could inject a large portion of these at a faster pace than maybe building brand new maps from the ground up. Either way, though, it does sound like Joseph Staten is hinting at something, so hopefully this will turn out to be true, and we'll get some of those classic maps for Infinite sometime in the future. Next up here, let's go talk about yet another live service game, being Babylon's Fall, which released just a couple of months ago. And really, since this game first released, it's been pretty evident that Square Enix, they have a problem. It has been struggling mightily, and now that is on full display. Unfortunately, it's been spotted that Babylon Fall's concurrent PC player count briefly dropped to just 1 user on May 4th. So that's a bad look, especially for a live service game that's been out for only a little over 2 months. And even though that this was just for a brief moment, the average player count for the last 30 days are not much better. It's only 59.5 players according to Steam charts, so Babylon's Fall, by all means, looks like it is a major flop. I hate to say that, as I do like Platinum games a lot, but I feel like that this kind of speaks to Square Enix's strategy when it comes to live service games. It's kind of interesting to me that Square Enix deemed Marvel's Avengers as a failure, which I'm not disagreeing with or anything like that, but that's one of the reasons that they decided to sell Crystal Dynamics to the Embracer Group. But was that really all Crystal Dynamics' fault? Because it seems like Square Enix here recently, they have been struggling with these live service games, and that's not just Marvel's Avengers. We're seeing the same thing with Babylon's Fall. We saw something similar with Chocobo Racing. It just seems like Square Enix, they're chasing this mythical cash cow. I know that Final Fantasy XIV is making them a lot of money because it fits into that plan. That's an MMO, so that makes sense. But some of these other games, I'm not entirely sure. And it's just something that a lot of companies have been doing in recent years. They are chasing this mythical cash cow, these live service games that makes a ton of money. You take a look at something like Fortnite or Apex Legends or Call of Duty Warzone. Those games have made their respective companies a ton of money. But I have said this before and I will say it again. It's the same thing with Battle Royales. All these companies that are chasing that trend, that's all they ever do. They chase them. Because as much money as these games can theoretically make, I also think that they are incredibly risky. There are a lot of failures out there where these games just completely flop and they make next to nothing. And unfortunately, it seems like Babylon's Fall is yet another casualty of a company chasing this mythical cash cow. Let's go ahead and talk about Xbox, though, as they had a pretty hectic weekend, to say the least, and this has led to a lot of discussion online regarding DRM. Now, basically what's happening here is that over the weekend, Xbox has had some server issues that has led to a major outage for Xbox Live. Now, we've had outages in the past, so that's not necessarily anything new. Every once in a while, Xbox Live, PSN, Nintendo Switch Online, whatever, they'll have a small outage and you won't be able to play your games online. The problem here, though, was that this wasn't necessarily just a problem with online games. This was also affecting single-player games that fans owned. It is being claimed that some games require a DRM check that, of course, requires internet connectivity before it can actually boot up into the game. So fans would turn on their single-player game and then discover that they could not play this game because they weren't connected to online, despite them owning the game, and again, it being a single-player game which does not require online connectivity. So this all just kind of highlighted how Xbox implements their DRM, as this really shouldn't be a problem. We'll get back to that here in just a moment. But one thing that was kind of strange about this whole situation was that not everybody was necessarily being affected. As an example, I did not have a problem over the weekend. I first turned on my Xbox Friday night, and I was trying to play Tetris Effect, which is an Xbox Game Pass game. I did have some friends over during the weekend, and I was going to let them check this game out. And at first, whenever I tried to turn it on, it wasn't working. I didn't really think much of it. I just simply turned off my Xbox and turned it back on, and it was working fine. In fact, I played some other Xbox Game Pass games, and I just didn't really think much of it until I went on Twitter, and then a lot of people were reporting they were having issues with Xbox Live and these different outages. So when I started looking into it, I started to notice that some people were having problems and others weren't. So what exactly is happening here? Now, it was being reported that if you set your console to home console, then suddenly you would not have these issues. But with me, I did not have my console set to home. I really don't know why that's not already enabled as a default, but nonetheless, I did not have it turned on and I was having no issues. Then for other people, they would turn it on and they were still having issues despite that supposedly allowing you to play your games offline. So really, it was just this whole mess that kind of shines a light on these DRM issues and what happens when servers go down. Now, this might be a rare occurrence, but it's still a concern nonetheless, especially when you start to talk about preservation. This has been a big topic here in recent years. We talked about it with Nintendo as they are shutting down the 3DS and the Wii U eShop. We've talked about it with PlayStation as they've tried to shut down a couple of their stores, and there was also that big C-bomb issue last year. And now here with DRM for games like Gran Turismo, that was a big topic a couple months back. And then here with Xbox's implementation of DRM, this does bring up the question, what's going to happen 20 years from now whenever maybe you can't reach these servers anymore? Are they going to fix things by then to just allow you to play these games, or will you be able to play the games that you've already bought 20 years from now? That's a question and a concern that's running through the community right now, and I think rightfully so. Yes, not everybody was necessarily affected by this outage. I wasn't, but there still were a lot of reports out there of people that was affected by this, and that really should not be the case, especially for games that does not require online connectivity. They should have been able to play these games offline without any issue, and that goes for both digital or games that they own physically. If I have a disc of a game, I should be able to pop it into my console 50 years from now, and it should still work. If I have a game downloaded to my solid-state drive, I should be able to play that years and years from now without the concern of worrying of whether or not I have to connect to those servers. This really needs to be fixed, and that is one of the interesting parts about this, because Xbox has been that one company that has done a good job with preservation. They have implemented backwards compatibility all the way back to the original Xbox. They have done a good job with this, but this goes against preservation in general. So I think that they do need to fix this, and hopefully we will hear an official statement from them sometime here soon on what happened here and how they can go about fixing this. I don't want this to be a situation where it's just kind of swept under the rug and we forget about it. This is an unacceptable situation that they need to address. Now, to be fair, since Phil Spencer's taken over Xbox, they have been a very consumer-friendly company. So my hope is that they're going to take a look at this and get things fixed up. But that's where us as a community, we need to let our voices be heard. If you want to get rid of some of these DRM issues, let Xbox know about it so they'll take a look at this and realize that they do have a problem here. Again, I don't think that this should ever be a problem where fans cannot play single-player games that they own. That is quite simply unacceptable, and this does need to be addressed both verbally and with action. Next up, though, let's go and talk about Nintendo, as the former Nintendo president, Reggie Fils-Aimé, has been making the rounds here recently. He's been doing several interviews for his newest book, Disrupting the Game, which, by the way, is great. I got it on Audible, and I do highly recommend it. But outside of that, he was asked about localizing Mother 3. Now, we actually talked a little bit about this last week, as somebody else had asked him about this game, and there's always been rumors about why this game has not been localized, and that really kind of centers on it being controversial for the West. Maybe Nintendo, they just don't want to deal with that controversy, which, I mean, especially with how social media and stuff works today, so maybe Nintendo, they don't want to deal with all of that. But according to Reggie Fils-Aimé, that's not actually the problem with the localization of Mother 3. Bloomberg actually asked him about this, and he stated that is not at all the issue why Mother 3 in particular never made it to the West. It was all based on the business needs and the business situation at the time. He went on to clarify that when Mother 3 came out for the Game Boy Advance in 2006, Nintendo had already transitioned to its next portable platform, the DS. So according to him, putting resources into translating and localizing a role-playing game for the older machine just didn't make business sense. So that is interesting, just considering all of the different rumors that's been circulating regarding Mother 3 and why we never actually got a localization for a well-received game, for a game that fans have been asking for years and years. That, though, does kind of bring us back to the original question, the original request, and all the optimism that maybe Mother 3, after 16 long years, can finally make it over to the West. I mean, maybe Reggie Fils-Aimé is correct in that it didn't make business sense back then because they had already transitioned over to the DS. But however, well, now Nintendo, they can monetize this game through Nintendo Switch Online. And what have we been hearing here recently? That Nintendo is looking to bring the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance over to Nintendo Switch Online. And wouldn't it be nice to get this much requested game into Nintendo Switch Online? I feel like a lot of people would probably subscribe to a service like that for this game alone. With that said, though, times have changed quite a bit in 16 years. Maybe what Reggie Fils-Aimé stated here for 2006 was true, but I have to wonder if that still applies to 2022. Is that still true that this game is not too controversial? And especially when you have, again, social media, things can be amplified even further. So I do wonder in modern day times if Nintendo feels comfortable releasing this game in the West, but maybe this will give you a little bit more optimism that in 2022 that suddenly a Mother 3 localization, officially by Nintendo, would make a little bit more business sense with the inclusion of Nintendo Switch Online. However, though, one thing that I will say is that regardless on whether or not we get this official localization, always keep in mind that there's a pretty good fan translation out there as well, so do keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and take a look at the poll of the day, though, and with all of the rumors recently regarding Square Enix, I wanted to ask you all, do you think Square Enix will be acquired in 2022? And to much of my surprise, most of you all do believe that yes, this will happen, with 53% of you saying yes, while 37% of you said no. That actually surprised me a little bit that most of you all do believe that Square Enix will be acquired in 2022, but I do completely understand why. There are a lot of rumors swirling around right now that kind of indicates that this could potentially happen. And then also with them selling off Crystal Dynamics as well as Eidos Montreal, some people believe that that is an indication that they are trying to set themselves up to be acquired by another company. Now, I actually believe that there is a possibility that the original rumor was actually just maybe them selling Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, and then maybe Sony was interested, but instead Embracer picked them up instead of Sony. I feel like that could have actually been the original rumor that was floating around, and it just got misconstrued as it got passed down the grapevine, as you will. Nonetheless, though, a lot of you all do seem to believe that this could actually end up happening, and I guess we'll just have to kind of wait and see how this one plays out. I am personally leaning against this happening, but if I am wrong about this situation, you all can come back to the channel and just tell me how wrong I was about this. I'm personally okay with that, but yeah, I guess we'll just have to kind of wait and see how this one plays out. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.